And you can tell when a text has been rebound, in part because basically the margins disappear. You will often especially notice it in the inside margin, that's called the gutter. You can tell here the text is only sort of legible, and only if you kind of really open the book, generally more than we would like to. When they did the rebinding, they also gilded the edges, so it looked all pretty. But the book was not always this way, and you know, Mrs. Wakeman was not its first owner by any stretch. There is one ownership inscription from a Charles Dean, Spark Street, Cambridge. Not sure which side of the Atlantic that Cambridge is. And one of the things that I've really enjoyed about this copy is that at some point, someone who apparently really liked strawberries noted that the word for strawberries can be found on page 98. And I'm not sure if that was Mr. Dean or not. But there is the word for strawberries, as well as Williams has put in a whole thing about strawberries and just how very delicious they are. And apparently the Narragansett would bruise them in a mortar and mix them with meal and make strawberry bread, which I think sounds pretty darn tasty. And if you've looked at the original printing of this book compared to a modern edition, you will notice not only things like the long S, but spelling is going to be different. English spelling was not regularized until really Noah Webster was sort of, on this side of the Atlantic, the one to really sort of lay down the spelling of words. So before that, before Webster's dictionary, spelling is not completely all over the place, but kind of all over the place. So that is our, not ours, copy of A Key into the Language. I was very happy to discover that we have, it's only one, but we do have a letter written by Roger Williams. It is a letter from July 11th, 1637, from Roger Williams to Governor Winthrop. This would have been Governor John Winthrop, one of the founders and really driving forces behind the Massachusetts Bay Colony. He and Williams had a complicated relationship. They did not see eye to eye on matters of religion by any stretch, but Winthrop apparently helped Williams escape to Rhode Island. So a little bit of both. But here you can really see what 17th century handwriting looks like. Even if you are used to reading cursive, your grandma's cursive on your birthday card, this is gonna still be different, and not just because of the spelling. The word forms are different. There's the occasional long S. He writes the occasional long S, but it's mostly the S's we're more accustomed to. So I am not an expert on 17th century paleography. I'm a medievalist, so ask me about 9th century writing and then we're good. But for this, what I can get from the letter is that Williams is writing to Governor Winthrop on behalf of a group of natives who came to Williams about some of their people who had been, I think, captured, basically wanting their release. So 1637, this is towards the end or just after the Pequot War. So I'm not entirely clear if the captive natives were regular prisoners, prisoners of war, slaves. John Winthrop was also one of the drivers of slavery in the English North American colonies. So unfortunately that is also an option in this case. But basically what Williams is doing is sort of passing along their request for the freedom of those folks. What I find, one of the things that I find interesting in this that I can make out is 3 of these men were Nyantiquik, and 1 was a Pequot. It seems he is a Pequot born, but hath long since been theirs, fallen to them, and done good service to them, done good service in their wars against the Pequots. Just interesting that it was sort of a diverse group that came to him. To talk about the paper a little bit, clearly this has had some damage to it. You can see some holes, a little bit of scorching, staining from some kind of liquid, but the paper itself is in really good condition. Obviously, I'm being very careful, but the paper itself is able to withstand this kind of handling. This paper, you can see much more easily the chain lines. Those are those kind of darker gray bands. And I can even see what's called a watermark. So each paper maker in their mesh frames, basically the center of the frame would be essentially their trademark. So like if Nike made paper, you would have the swoosh in the middle of their mesh. So you can just see, my guess is it's supposed to be a tree. It's upside down, but it looks like what might be sort of balls of fruit on top of a tree trunk. So what's also interesting is that you can see how this letter was folded. They didn't do envelopes. You just folded up the piece of paper, sealed it, sent it off. So this is a letter from Williams, and he signs off, "Thus humbly begging mercy from the God of heaven for your something in all affairs, Roger Williams." And then sometime later, I'm guessing, to me it looks like a 19th century hand, has a note printed in the 6th volume, 4th series of the Massachusetts Historical Collections, page 202 to 3. This original is given to the Reverend Dr. Daggett, by Robert Winthrop. So this is a letter that had apparently stayed in the Winthrop family archive and was then passed on. And Daggett is a Yale name, so that would explain why it wound up here. So that's what I wanted to show you in this sort of first video, both key into the language and then a little bit of Roger Williams' own writing. And in the next segment, I'm going to talk about a couple of the religious works of his that we have in our holding.